Let me take you back to last year, my junior year of high school. I had a rigorous course load, a part-time job, and extracurricular responsibilities, like so many other students in America. And also like so many other students in America, I was only getting 5 to 6 hours of sleep every night. I was hardly spending any time outdoors, and my diet consisted entirely of coffee and carbs. I'd create to-do lists and schedules every night before I'd go to bed. I'd even pencil in time for social interaction and bathroom breaks. Yep, that was me. And I did this all with just one end in sight: to maximize my productivity. I wanted to be a living, breathing machine of a student. And it kind of worked. I mean, I was making good grades. My teachers took notice of my work ethic. I was in good shape for college applications. I was making money. The system was rewarding me. But you want to guess what wasn't rewarding me? My body. Let me tell you, I've always been blessed with relatively good health. Up until last year, that is. That's when I started to fall ill very frequently with various colds and ailments, a different one every time. It got to a point where by mid-year, I was getting sick almost every other week. And every time I'd get sick, I'd just think to myself, push through it. Don't miss school, don't miss work, and don't fall behind. And once I recover, I'd start up my bad habits again. Little sleep, poor nutrition, no fresh air, and my days planned to the minute. I mean, at a certain point, I realized I was leading an unhealthy lifestyle, one that left me especially vulnerable to disease. But I viewed it as a necessary trade-off to success. And I know this isn't a mentality limited to myself. We often view our bodies as just a vessel to get us from point A to point B, as an obstacle that we need to put up with in order to reach peak efficiency. Now, at the time, I did sort of a cost-benefit analysis, very objectively evaluating the value of my health. I mean, was it really such a problem to continue living the way I had been, not prioritizing my physical or mental well-being? Well, let's take a look. On the one hand, sure, I'm losing free time and I'm getting sick a lot. But the benefits? By putting my health on the back burner, I'm able to focus more time on schoolwork. I'm able to balance clubs, a job, extracurriculars. And perhaps most importantly, I am successful in the eyes of others. My mentors, teachers, parents, even LinkedIn connections. The whole world was validating my accomplishments that I thought were only possible through this unhealthy lifestyle that I was leading. Now, why would I quit doing something if it was getting me the results I wanted? If it was earning me respect from people that I also respect? If the benefits outweighed the costs, as it seemed to do in this case? The answer is, I wouldn't quit. I'd continue living the way I had been. And my situation last year is just a snapshot of a larger issue. Our culture has stopped prioritizing health. In today's post-industrial world, we are rewarded for hyperproductivity at the expense of our physical and mental well-being. We tend to fetishize the grind, or the hustle as it's called. And that's why we see things like rising workaholism in the United States, phenomena that are inextricably linked to American society and American culture. A study conducted by National Today found that the average American works 140 more hours than his Japanese counterpart and 500 more hours than his French counterpart every year. Moreover, the United States is one of the only developed nations that doesn't guarantee paid time off for illness. Same goes for the thousands of American schools and colleges with rigid attendance policies. I mean, how can we be expected to care about our bodies if it could cost us our jobs, our livelihood, our education? To dissect this cultural problem, we really need to begin with capitalism, the free market economic system that governs the society and it breeds individualism. Under a capitalist system, productivity is the principal driving force of economic growth and an improved standard of living. Everyone wants to be productive. But capitalism has transcended economics. It's injected itself into the social fabric of the United States. It tells us to be productive to an extreme. We begin to feel like every waking moment of our lives must be spent towards some greater goal, or we're just wasting our time. Now, with that comes a lot of issues, but I want to focus on arguably the most important one. How capitalist pressures, combined with modern grind culture, is destroying perceptions of health and wellness in America. And to do that, allow me to present to you 3 myths that American culture tells us to believe about health and wellness. The first myth that I want to get into is that health is a mindset. Now, let me ask you, have you ever wished that you could just wish away an illness? Follow-up question, have you ever tried to just wish away an illness with sheer willpower? You know how it is. Sometimes you wake up in the morning, you feel a little bit of a slight cold or the chills coming on, but you continuously ignore it and power through the rest of the day. You're all, the cold never bothered me anyway, until the next day when it's full-on flu season in your house. It's abundantly clear that the world isn't put on pause when you fall sick. School's still in session, work continues on, and your responsibilities start to pile up. But we're fed this narrative that somehow our work ethic can supersede our physical ability to work. For example, you might think to yourself, yeah, I don't need to worry about that sore throat. I can still nail that history presentation in 5th period as long as I man up and am mentally strong enough. Granted, there is some truth to this myth, in that wellness of both mind and body are equally important to holistic care. Moreover, you shouldn't fall into a pit of despair at every scrape or sniffle you experience. But this idea that health is all mental is a complete lie. Proper rest and sleep are important to recovery from any infirmity. Ignoring your symptoms can only hinder your productivity and cost more in the long run, especially if it leads to a more serious condition. With that, let's move on to myth number 2. We do not have a social responsibility to protect others from illness. Up until last year, there were hardly any. There were little to no public health safeguards put in place to protect vulnerable people from illness. And there was certainly no room in our busy schedules to take time off when we were sick. As a result, persevering through sickness became the norm. It was the way to go, and it was seen as an achievement. Because of this capitalist pressure to be productive at all times, working while sick started to demonstrate resilience to us rather than carelessness. Let me tell you, I fully internalized this myth though. Last year, I attended an academic competition after an 18-hour international flight. And let's just say I wasn't feeling well at all. I'm talking all the colds and flu symptoms you can think of. You name it, I probably had it. But regardless of my physical condition, my paralyzing fear of inactivity led me to continue attending this competition. And I actually did quite well for myself. At the time, I remember being proud of myself for working through this competition and attaining success, even despite the obvious obstacles. But then, the COVID-19 pandemic hit last year, and everything changed. I, like so many others, finally became conscious of the effect that my actions had on others. And I was ashamed. By going to that competition last year, I was putting other people's health at risk. And I wasn't just putting other people's health at risk. I was putting elderly people's health at risk, people that were more vulnerable. Luckily, nobody got sick because of me at the time. But what about the thousands of COVID-19 cases that can be traced back to ignorance, to someone going out while ignoring their red flag symptoms? Concerns like this are why this myth is a complete lie. We do have a social responsibility to protect more vulnerable others from illness, to social distance during a pandemic, and to disclose when we're feeling unwell. Finally, I'd like to move on to the third and biggest myth. Health is not something to be maintained, but rather something to be treated once a problem arises. A study conducted by Dr. Paula Prinzi at University of Mississippi found that only 2.7% of Americans met the basic requirements for a healthy lifestyle, which researchers defined as clean eating, weekly exercise, and a healthy body weight. This is even more concerning when you consider the health disadvantage America has compared to other developed countries. In study after study, American health outcomes rank far lower than other comparable modern countries. Now, why is this the case? It'd be easy to shift all the blame onto the weaknesses of the American healthcare system, and there's definitely some fault there as well. But I'd again like to shed some light on the cultural dynamics at play. Americans share this common mentality that work comes before self-care. In a 2019 OnePoll survey, the most common reason American respondents gave for not pursuing a healthier lifestyle was because they simply didn't have enough time in the day to do so. We're so caught up in being productive in other ways, for example, in the workforce, at school, wherever it may be, that we fail to recognize self-care as a necessary and productive task. But this kind of thinking is so flawed. Self-care and maintaining your health is a priority, and it should be important to you. And it's not something that should just sink to the bottom of your to-do list. Your health should be a priority now. It's so much better to engage in preventative self-care rather than restorative medical care once you've already developed a problematic condition. Taking time to eat a little cleaner, exercise, go on walks, and visit the doctor when needed will only help prevent illness in the future. So we need to stop using a lack of time and a surplus of responsibilities as a crutch or as an excuse for not pursuing healthier habits. Now that I've gotten into the 3 myths spread by capitalist culture, why don't we take a second look at that cost-benefit analysis from earlier? Upon realizing that I was internalizing these myths spread by capitalist grind culture, I took a second look at the costs of my unhealthy habits. I wasn't just falling sick more often and losing free time. I was actually endangering public health by going out while I was sick. On a personal level, my mental health was deteriorating as my workaholism grew. I was putting myself at risk for chronic conditions like heart disease and diabetes by not exercising or eating right. The financial costs of treating such conditions would far exceed the time commitment of preventative self-care. And finally, the ultimate cost was the risk of mortality. A longitudinal study conducted by Dr. Keith Diaz at Columbia University found a strong association between premature death and prolonged sedentary periods, not unlike those that we engage in when we're doing desk work or schoolwork. So when I look at the scales now, it becomes abundantly clear that my lifestyle was a lot more costly than I initially thought. So what did I do to turn my life around? Well, I wish I could tell you that I ditched the self-imposed schedules and went full-on carpe diem health nut, but I didn't. What I did do was start prioritizing myself a little more. I'm more conscious of what I put in my body and how I feel, and I'm less conscious of how I look to others and how much time I'm wasting. I'll be the first to admit that I'm not perfect, though. I still sometimes believe in these lies. But I've seen noticeable improvement in my health over the past year. And while I can't be sure of why that is, I'd like to think that my lifestyle and mentality changes were a huge part of it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what myself or any one person does to improve. There will always be others who prioritize work over their health. As long as these myths that I've identified for you today continue to be part of mainstream American culture. And that's why American cultural perceptions surrounding health and wellness need to be revamped entirely. And the great thing is, you can help make that happen. By taking some extra time to sleep at night, to go on walks, to enjoy the world around you, you'll be rejecting these myths perpetrated by grind culture. So, take a step back from work, school, or whatever occupies the most of your time, and start putting your wellness first. I promise, your body will thank you in return.